All right, welcome back to the Wholesome Lending Group Podcast. My name is Austin.
Susy.
All right, and today we're talking about how to buy your first rental property. We work with a lot of real estate investors. We personally believe that real estate is one of the best ways to build generational wealth. And so it allows you to leverage through financing, take advantage of different tax benefits, so on and so forth. And so if you've ever thought about, okay, how do I get a rental property? And just to be clear, when we're going to talk about some of the nuances here, if you're brand new in real estate and you're trying to figure this out, hopefully this video is extremely helpful. We're going to kind of go through our steps of what we've seen with us working with investors and how to actually do this from start to finish. Now, some of these things are going to need a deeper explanation, right? Some of these segments we're definitely going to need to go more in depth on. So if you have questions, please leave them in the description and then we can make another video going over it. But that's pretty much how we're going to go about it. So just to start, the couple steps that we have, we'll just start and we'll go through, and then feel free to use the chapters in the description below to kind of move around the video to get to certain sections to kind of hear our take. And so, and just so you realize who we are business funding experts. We work with real estate investors, help them find the financing they need to fund the deals they find fast. We have a whole nother channel called Wholesome Financials. Thousands of people watch that with us to talk to us about business credit and alternative lines of funding. So we're professionals in that sense. But also my wife here is a licensed mortgage loan originator, or a mortgage loan officer. Is that?
That term could be used interchangeable.
Okay, interchangeably. So we've been in the industry. We've been in the industry for a long time. So we know mortgages. We know how to finance deals. It's like the thing that we do. And so feel free to check us out, look us up, anything like that. So with that said, starting off, when it comes to buying your first rental property, what do you think would be the first step you'd recommend?
Honestly, even before like you go out looking for properties, I'm going to say start working on your credit.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Build your credit up, start paying down some of the debt that's on your credit card, because the lower your credit score is, unfortunately, the higher your interest rates are, sometimes the higher the down payment. So if you want the best deal out there, I would highly, highly suggest just starting off with a credit. If the long-term goal is to buy a property, I would look at my credit report, pull it up, and start paying debt down. So if you have collections, if you have late payments, all that stuff is going to weigh your stuff down. So if you need to do credit repair, whatever you need to do to get it up in the 720s and above, that's going to put you in the best position possible to get the best deal, honestly.
Yeah, life is better when you have better credit. Now, here's the thing. Some of the strategies we're going to talk about as far as financing these rental property deals doesn't actually involve your personal credit as much as you think, right? You can have a much lower score, especially in the world of real estate investing. At the end of the day, the cash flow of the property and the ARV potentially, depending on what method you're looking at, that's really what's king. But some lenders, depending on where you go, they still need to see if you have good credit. You need a good track record, especially if you're an inexperienced investor and you're just starting out, right? So,
yeah.
Go ahead.
And you're just going to get stuck with high interest.
True. Yeah.
You know,
yeah,
like
100%.
you'll get the deal, but you're not going to get the prime 6.2 that you normally would see. You know, you're probably going to be in the 7 or 8s, which that's going to kill your cash flow, if anything. Yeah.
So I'd recommend you want to have a credit score, which is, I recommend nothing lower than 7. Okay. Some people say you can get away with 680. Don't just bump it up. Now, normally people's credits drop below 700 because they have high utilization, right? Or they have too many inquiries in a short amount of time, or they might have a late payment, charge off, a negative on the credit report. Get all of that handled. Go to a credit repair specialist. If you need any recommendations, just shoot us an email. We will recommend people to you. We don't personally do any credit repair, but we've worked with credit repair agents and people that have companies that we would recommend and are trusted that get actual results. Get your credit repaired 100%. I agree. That is a great first step. All right. So moving on to the second step of how to buy your first rental property. The next part is you need to figure out what kind of property you're going to buy.
Yep.
Are you going to do condos? Are you going to do small apartment buildings, single families, triplexes, duplexes? Depending on what you buy depends on the strategy, right? The first thing I would 100% recommend after getting your credit right is identifying what type of properties you want to invest in. They all have pros. They all have cons. They're extremely different depending on who you are, your lifestyle, there's a different strategy for a different person. So most people traditionally, when they're starting in real estate, they start with single family homes. You start in a market that you can afford. A lot of people go Midwest. A lot of people go to the South. Start in a market you can afford. They start with single family. A lot of other people will jump into duplexes and triplexes. Those are people that are doing the FHA route. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But I couldn't recommend more choosing your property type. That's what I recommend for step 2.
Yeah, absolutely. So that leads into step 3, which is once you...
Sorry, I got one more comment on step 2. Sorry about that. Also, keep in mind, it's not just single family, triplex, duplex, but some things to keep in mind. I wrote some notes just to make sure we stay organized here. You also want to, outside factors like purchase price, I talked about like the market you're picking, right?
Yep.
I said purchase price, but the word I meant to use was market. Choose your market. Where are you going to be investing at?
That's key.
And just own that area. You're not going to be able to learn and know all of these areas 100%. So you want to make sure that you pick a market, not just a type of property, but a market is what you're choosing.
That's right,
If you want to buy in Indiana, only focus on Indiana until you're good in Indiana, right? Also, keep in mind when you're doing research, certain things like HOAs, right? Are you getting a property with HOA or not? That has some variables to it. Is there a rental demand area, right? You want to do a bunch of research on that market, not just the type of property, but that market. Because if you find a gold mine, if you find a great property that cash flows, that does well, you're going to want to keep buying in that market. But you're not going to stumble upon that. You're going to have to do some research, right? Like when we were looking at properties in northern Dallas area, because there's a great market there, McKinney, Texas. And I looked a lot into that market. I like the Dallas market. It looks like it's growing. There's so much going on there. So regardless, and now we found a property within that market. I picked my market first, found my property second. So when you're researching, you're choosing your property type, you need to go and pick your market. So I guess that does kind of go into step 3, but go ahead.
So, good segue into step 3, which is research the market, research the property, run some numbers, look at some comps. Maybe you have a real estate agent involved and they can run some comps for you. What does the area look like? What do the rents look like in that area? Is it up and coming? Has it been declining? Like all these factors are going to play into how well you're going to cash flow later on, right?
Yeah. And there's plenty of research out there. There's hot markets and there's plenty of books on this, right? You can learn how to run comps. I learned how to run comps reading, I think it was a fix and flip book. And I was like, oh, okay, this makes a lot of sense. Like you can figure this out. The biggest thing that you're looking for is that the rental income exceeds the expenses of the property.
Yeah.
That's how you know, okay, I have something good. At the end of the day, that's really what you're looking for. And so that's the number one thing to determine whether or not you have a good property that you want to invest in. That's worthy of being a rental property, right?
Yeah, I would say so for sure. That leads into, okay, so once you did all the research and you're like, okay, I think we got a good one. Yeah. You're going to start preparing your down payment. Okay.
Yeah. Ooh, actually, sorry. One more thing. This is why you write notes, so you can double check. I'm not trying to miss anything for y'all. Another thing you want to keep in mind is when you're looking for research, when you're researching your properties, after you identify your market, things like that, there's different types of investment properties that are a little bit more, what's the word I'm looking for? They're a little bit more involved than normal, right? So what I would recommend is try to find properties that don't require a lot of structural change, like a heavy rehab. You're looking for cosmetics. That's what they call it. Just slap some lipstick on that pig, just a little bit of paint, maybe some flooring. Those things are extremely inexpensive, easy to repair. Just a new fridge, maybe change the countertop if you want to go that deep. But it doesn't require you opening walls, moving rooms, right? You want to stick to something that requires very minimal improvement. So like paint and flooring are normally, that's what you want to go for. If you find something, you're like, okay, especially if you're starting out, because the rehab or getting it up to code to be ready to be rented can be a little overwhelming. If it just needs to be cleaned out, carpets ripped out, new paint, deep clean, that's perfect. It's a couple $1,000s. You're good to go. So anyway, now, so after those things that you take into account, now you can move into, for example, we were looking at a brand new build, right? That makes it 10 times easy. I don't need any renovations. It's a new build, right? So, but if you're looking for something, you want a good deal, just make sure that the worst of the renovations is just cosmetic. because anything else could be a headache and it revolves a whole nother skill. You're gonna need a GC, all that stuff. So keep that in mind. But now, yes, let's go to the down payment part.
So, on average, a DSCR loan for these type of, rental properties, they're going to want 15 to 20%. Okay.
Yeah.
I think you can get away with 15% if you've been a really good seasoned investor. You have a couple properties under your belt that you've successfully flipped and or maintain. So on the safe side though, I would aim for 20% down payment. So whatever your property costs, just make sure you have at least 20% down payment. Now there are strategies that we teach, right, on how to gather this 20% if you don't have that collateral right now. I don't know if we want to talk about it in this video.
Yeah. Let's dive into it. Like, people need to know what options are out there.
Yeah. So we teach real estate investors specifically how to acquire 0% business credit cards that are super high limit. And then we also teach them how to liquidate those cards so that they can use towards this down payment. So this 20% would essentially be covered with a 0% business card. So maybe you could shed a little bit more light into that.
Yeah. And so just keep in mind, obviously the traditional method is just save up your coins, borrow from a friend, whatever that looks like, which is perfectly fine. Yeah. But when it comes to finding creative ways for financing and using other people's money, high limit business credit is a great it's a great tool and a great product. The problem is most people don't know how to qualify for the high part, the high limit part. Yeah. They can get, they'll get a Chase Business Unlimited card for a $16,000 limit. Can't really do too much with that there, right? Especially if our 25% is like looking 45, like exactly. 60. So when we work with investors, we help them get approvals kind of like the ones you see on the screen. 75,000, 40,000,
60. We just got Michael 60 last week.
You're right.
On just 2 Amex cards. So pretty cool. But yes, you do have to have a good credit for that strategy though. And
you have to have a strategy. Most people don't know. So if you want to work with a capital strategist, if you're interested in that type of financing, you're like, I want to get started with rental investment properties, but at the same time, my cash is tied up over here. I need more cash flow, or I don't have any cash at all, but I know I want to get started. That might be something that could help you. And that's what we do when we're working with investors and clients.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So once you've gotten the down payment and all that good stuff.
We got a lot more. Where you know that? We got a lot more on the down payment part. So there's a couple things with the down payment part. Go ahead. Yeah, put them up. That's what we were. There's a couple things with the down payment part that I think is important. Number one, that when we're talking about the type of product you're using for your investment property, it really does depend based on the direction you want to go in. So there's two types of what's the word I'm looking for?
Lending products that you can utilize?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, because that's depending on what lending product you're going to go for determines the type of down payment you're looking at. Right.
Yeah. So, that's good. Yeah. That's
so if you're going to house hack, right, and we'll do a whole video on that, right? If you're going to buy a duplex, stay on one side and
rent
someone else
the other.
Yes, that's going to go on your personal credit, because you're going to go FHA, that's a Freddie Mac product. It's harder to qualify. You're going to need income verification.
Like W-2, taxes, all that good stuff.
And good credit. But the interest rates are a lot lower versus if you're going to true rental property, you can use a DSCR loan. In DSCR loan, it can just be with your LLC. You can stack as many rental properties as you like, and it's not connected with you. It doesn't go on your personal credit. So that's super important because there's different types of, like, those require two different types of down payment. If you go to FHA route, it's 3.3 to 5%.
Yeah.
So extremely cheaper down payment. You don't need that much, but it's harder to qualify.
It's harder to qualify. And then another thing to know, I think you touched upon it. It goes on your personal credit.
Yes.
Whereas a DSCR loan does not go on your personal credit.
Yes.
You don't need the most perfect score. But you do need a higher down payment, right? As opposed to 3.5. Now you're looking at 20%. And it won't ever show up on your personal credit. It'll only be under your LLC.
Yeah, 100%. So that's a big thing right there in and of itself. So making sure when we're talking about down payments, obviously you can save your money, have it all ready to go. But if you obviously use business credit, that's a great advantage. But also it does determine based off the type of product, you're doing. But this goes back to why we said picking your type of property makes sense. If you do duplex and you can qualify, FHA would probably be the best thing you can do. But if you're just going, single family, I'm just going to have renters in there, I'm not living in the property, then DSCR is the way to go. So you are looking at 20 to 25% down payment.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, it was good. Come on.
All right.
Make sure we use them.
So the next
step. People need to know.
The next step is send your deal to a lender. Send it to a lender just to see if the numbers, the research that you've done makes sense. They're going to assess the property and make sure that it is going to be cash flowing, that you are going to have money left over after you pay your expenses every month. So they're going to make sure that, they're going to do their due diligence in the back, and then they're going to give you the green light to say, hey, I think you got a deal in your hands.
Yeah. And this is something that we've done with clients plenty of times. And if you have a deal and you're like, okay, I need a lender to submit it to so I can, and I'm submitted to a lender for a DSCR loan. Let me be specific. We're talking about DSCR loans. That's the best type of loan you can use for a rental property that you're not going to live in, that it doesn't have to go on your personal credit, and you don't need any income verification. We're talking about DSCR loans. So you would send it to a lender for a DSCR loan. There's plenty of lenders. Go private. They're a little bit more lenient. They're willing to work with you, because if you go to a bank that normally specializes in conventional for investment property loan, they might be a little bit stringent, or they're not willing to put together a package to work with you. But this is something that we do for our clients a lot. They're trying to get good rates. And so if you don't have a lender to send it to us, and then we'll connect you with our trusted lenders. And hopefully that'll help, and we can walk you and guide you through and hold your hand from the beginning of the process all the way to the end. It's kind of what we're trying to do in this video as well, right? So yes, that's the next part. And so after you submit that deal to the lender, the next part is, okay, if you get it to the lender, you submit it to the lender, and the lender's like, hey, well, this is the part we were kind of talking about off camera a second ago. If the lender's like, hey, this deal works out, then I recommend going, boom, getting it under contract, right? But here's the thing. That's not necessarily the case always. Sometimes it's better to lock up the deal, get it under contract, put down the earnest money deposit, and then find a hard money lender. So we were kind of talking about this. What are the pros and cons of your perspective of the two approaches? Because there's no wrong way. It just depends on what you value, so to speak.
Yeah, so if you go the route where you put in an offer first without going to the lender, that's fine, because you kind of lock up the deal and make sure that, no one steals it per se. But if after you put it on a contract and then you send it to the lender and the numbers don't make sense, something's off about the property, or maybe, your credit doesn't pan out, something goes wrong and the deal is pretty much dead, then now you have to go back and then cancel that contract, or find another lender, and hopefully they can get you approved, And so that's kind of like the downside, right? You might have to go back and cancel it. Hopefully there's contingencies in there so that you can get out of that contract, without any penalties or anything. And on the flip side, if you put in an offer after the lender has approved it, then, you're good to go. Yeah. But potentially you could miss out on the deal if somebody went ahead of you and put it on a contract, and then now you go back and it's like, oh, well, it's gone. So timing.
100%. So a couple things I would comment on, and some solutions I would bring to the table. Number one, if you are submitting the deal to the lender, you just want to see if it makes sense, what your numbers look like, that's perfectly fine. Like you said, worst case scenario, somebody else locks that deal up. They find it, it's gone. Right. I'm a big fan of lock that thing up, especially because if it's a good deal, it's a good deal. But if you lock it up and then submit to the lender, you're like, okay, well, what if I lock this deal up? I get to lender. The lender goes, these DSCR numbers don't make sense. The ratio's too low. It doesn't make a lot of sense. When you go and you put down the earnest money deposit, when you go and get the property under contract, give yourself grace period. Give yourself 10 to 30 days. And say, if something comes back in the inspection, we're able to walk away, I get my money back, right? Yeah. You need the seller to agree to that, to give you enough time to run these numbers by your lender or by a new lender, right? Yeah. Doesn't matter who you are, whatever project or property you're locking under contract, give yourself some leeway, give yourself some time so that and write it in the contract. You're not going to write specifically, hey, if I change my mind, I don't like it, I should be able to leave. Normally what people put is this is contingent on inspection, this is contingent on appraisal, contingent on loan approval, things like that, right? Make sure you're not able to lose your earnest money deposit. That's the important part. And so there's plenty of ways for people to do this consistently. That's what I would recommend to get out of it. But I'm a big fan of get under contract first, then lender. But depending on the situation where you're at, they're both pretty much fine.
Yeah.
But essentially the step that we're at. So in the video, when we talked about it before we got on camera, we were going to agree, send to lender first, then we're getting under contract. So now, all right, we have the property under contract. Right. Now what happens next? Right. The lender says it's good.
Yeah.
We'll work with you. We got you. You get the property under contract. What can people expect in the next part of this process?
Yeah. So the next part is it's all protocol. It's inspection. So the lender is going to essentially order an appraisal report. They're going to do, their due diligence on your LLC. You're going to have to submit all the paperwork that they want, whether it be bank statements to show that you have reserves and or the down payment in your bank account, where it's coming from, your EIN paperwork, maybe a voided check to where, the money will go to once, it closes. So all this type of paperwork that normally takes anywhere from 1 to 2 weeks or even less, depending on how fast you kind of get on the ball and send everything back that underwriting is wanting.
Yeah. So just to be clear, underwriting, that's the term we're talking about. Once your deal it's the ball's rolling, everything's in escrow, you go through underwriting. And like she was mentioning, underwriting is the one to see your entity documents. They're going to double check the appraisal. Sometimes internally they might do a rent schedule. What does that mean? It just means they're going to check and make sure that the market rent is valid. But normally if you send the deal to the lender ahead of time, they're already going to do a rent schedule, right? Versus if you send it ahead of time, they're going to already do the rent schedule. If you already have the deal under contract and then you go and you send it to the lender, then they'll probably do a rent schedule. Essentially, it's just one of the steps that they take before they tell you this deal works or it doesn't. But underwriting is the steps you're going to go through. They're going to look at the inspections, everything like that, just to make sure that they're supporting, they're funding something that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And that leads to the last step, which is probably the happiest step for everybody, all parties involved, which is pretty much closing the deal. Yep. And so the seller gets their funds, right? Yep. They get the wire. You get the property. The broker gets paid. So it pretty much finalizes everything. So that way you can start putting in your own renter in there.
Yep. That's it. Paperwork's done. Funds are transferred. You got the keys, you put your renter in there, you start cash flowing. That's exactly what you want. And so at that point, if you followed all those steps, you got your rental property. So let's recap what those steps are, just to be safe, to be sure. Run those down.
Okay. So step number 1, make sure your credit's up to par. Start fixing it if your goal is to get into real estate. Step number 2, choose your property. What type of property? Condo, duplex, single family home. Yeah. Step 3, do your research. Right? Do your research. Make sure the numbers make sense.
Yep.
Prepare the down payment. Step 4. And then you can tag on step 5.
Step 5, we send the deal to a lender, or step 5 could be you get it under contract first. Then step 6, send it to the lender. But for us, we said step 5, send it to a lender, especially if you're just starting out. You don't know what you're looking for. It's good to talk to somebody that knows what they're doing, that's been in the game for a long time. Yep. Step 6, get the offer under contract, lock it up. Step 7, once it's locked up, start the inspection process, appraisals, underwriting, go through that process to make sure the lender does their due diligence so they can close the deal. And then step 8, escrow closes, keys get handed out, funds get transferred, things are done. Those 8 steps, if you follow them correctly, you should be starting. You should have your first rental property. Now, I know we've covered a lot, and honestly, this isn't something that you can just cover in 20, 30 minutes, okay? But if you do have questions, leave them in the description below. We'd love to answer them. Or if you have any feedback, if you're a seasoned real estate investor yourself and you're like, hey, you know what? Some of the stuff you guys said, I don't really agree with. Man, put it in the description below. We'd love to talk about it. We love when people engage and contribute to the conversation. But if you're a brand new real estate investor, hopefully this is something that helps you if you're trying to figure out, how do I get my first rental property, following these steps should get you on the ballpark. They should get you moving forward and on the right track. And so, and again, if you have a property and you're looking for a DSCR loan, this is what we do. Outside of helping, well, not outside, essentially it's all in that same ecosystem of helping investors find financing for their deals, whether it be down payment or the actual entire loan, DSCR loan for the rental property. That's what we do. If you're in that situation, you're like, hey, I got a deal and I need some help. I don't know what I'm doing, or I'm brand new, or I know what I'm doing, I just need help scaling. Click the link in the description below and work with us. You can input your deal, or you can just shoot us an email at info@wholesomelendinggroup.com. And we'd love to talk to you about your deal and help get that pushed through. So we appreciate you guys tuning into this episode. I think it's been long enough. We'll do a personal check-in maybe in the next episode. But we appreciate you guys tuning in. Hopefully this is valuable, and we'll see you in the next one.
Peace.